Probably the biggest reason was because of the border and because of illegal immigration. We're getting them out, and that's why I was elected. A judge wasn't elected to do that. I was elected to do that.
Oh, the Supreme Court, bro, jacked them. Jacked Trumpy. They did work late, dude. The 1 a.m. drop. This is huge, dude. Everybody thought the Supreme Court was just gonna like rubber stamp Trump. The holdouts were Thomas and Alito were the two dissenters. But dude, 7-2, man. Now, again, guys, here's the deal. Before we even watch this video, I just want to acknowledge that Trump's entire ruse here is fucking bullshit, okay? This Alien Enemies Act is fucking bullshit. And you know they're just playing a con, okay? Let me just give you an example. So they have been sharing this all over. This is just one of many, but we have seen it all over the internet where they have made a huge deal about how Trump has fixed the border. Trump himself has shared these on Truth Social. He has shared information that has shown, like, look at how I've already fixed the border. Now, if this is the case, clearly there was never a war. It was not even a huge deal. It took him less than 2 months to fix this shit. So for them to be claiming a wartime statute, the Alien Enemies Act, and declaring 𝗫𝗄𝗪 a national terrorist group, and then they're saying like, oh, we're at war with this gang, it's an invasion. But like, no, it's not. If it was an invasion, this number would be massive. If the number stayed up here, they probably could have called it an invasion. But with a number like this, it clearly ain't an invasion. So this idea that Trump he's trying to ride both sides of the fence, where to the public and to get the claps and to keep his approval rating up, he's like saying, hey guys, we already fixed the border. Look how great I am. I'm kicking ass. But then to fuel his reckless abandon and how he just wants to ignore everybody's due process, he's claiming we're at war, we're being invaded, everything is so bad he's got to use this 130-year-old like wartime statute to save the country. But homie, you can't do both. When you go to court on this shit, you can't have both of those things in your arsenal. You're not going to win any court cases that way. You're not going to win approval to use the Alien Enemies Act when you're running around touting how you've already solved the border crisis. Like, this guy's not smart, right? These guys, this is what I'm talking about. They are not tactical.
The United States Supreme Court just issued an emergency ruling. An emergency stay just issued blocking the Trump regime from sending a group of Venezuelan migrants currently being housed at the Blue Bonnet Detention Center in Texas to the concentration camps in El Salvador. So the ACLU files with the Supreme Court, and then at 1 a.m. on Saturday, the Supreme Court responds. Let me read for you the order by the Supreme Court.
Gave it up, baby.
The Supreme Court says the following. In the case of AARP et al. V. Trump, President of the United States et al., there is before the court an application on behalf of a putative class of detainees seeking an injunction against their removal under the Alien Enemies Act. The matter is currently pending before the Fifth Circuit. Upon action by the Fifth Circuit, the Solicitor General is invited to file a response to the application before this court as soon as possible. The government is directed not to remove any member of the putative class of detainees from the United States until further order of this court. Justice Thomas and Justice Alito
7-2, baby.
From the court's order. Statement from Justice Alito to follow. And as of this recording, I don't have Justice Alito's statement yet, but that means of the 9 justices, it appears 7 justices agreed with this injunctive relief, this stay for now, at least emergency stay. Do not send these detainees until you hear from us. We need to hear what the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is going to do. They haven't responded. Justice Thomas and Justice Alito in a very scary way, they would allow these migrants to be sent to El Salvador. So Texas, unfortunately, is the right place for jurisdiction. Why? Because the detention centers in Texas, the Blue Bonnet Detention Center, which is where the migrants were sent, the Trump regime sent them there because they think also Texas is a more favorable forum for the litigation. But that's why this is happening in Texas.
So here's my thing. My thing is this, you know, when Trump found out about this, you know he was fucking livid, right? You know he was livid, right? I'm sure something got thrown against the wall. I'm sure there was a bevy of expletives. I would have loved to have been there, been a fly in the wall, but let's look at the reaction, because there was a fairly strong reaction here. Obviously, people on the left wing were all pointing out that a 7-2 ruling is really big. It should come down to this, to the fact that if Trump wants to do his deportations, he's allowed to have his little ICE hit squad. They're allowed to do that shit and to run these people through their due process. But this idea that while he's claiming that the border is secure, he is trying to claim that we're at war with Venezuela and using this Alien Enemies Act. Dude, the Alien Enemies Act is very specific. That statute from 1798, it was, right on the heels of the Revolutionary War. There's a lot of imperialism happening in the Americas. There was a lot of, activity where people were sort of taking new land, a lot of skirmishes happening. So the whole point of the Alien Enemies Act was, if we're at war with France, the U.S. government could just get rid of every French national from the country while we were at war with France. And that was the point. The point was, while we're at war with France, you're not going to let French settlers be like, hey, we're not part of this war. We just came to settle in America. So then they're like, digging information and or sabotaging the Americans during the war. So that's why the Alien Enemies Act was created. It was to prevent sabotage and subterfuge coming from people who were pretending to be colonizers during an active wartime, which was totally understandable why you would do that. But we're not at war with Venezuela. Trump's entire basis for using this act is fantasy. He's trying to loophole. He's trying to grasp for as much executive power as he can. And yeah, there's not been a declaration of war by Congress. And beyond that, though, even, there have been times where we're at war where there's not a congressional declaration, like Afghanistan. And certainly we've had instances in the Middle East, but we're not actively at war with Venezuela at all. We're not taking land in Venezuela. They don't have troops here. We haven't been fighting Venezuelan troops. There's never been any war activity with Venezuela whatsoever. There have been some people from Venezuela that have committed crimes here, but that doesn't mean Trump gets to declare war with the entire country, unilaterally. I mean, it is some bullshit, dude.
The fact that this wasn't a 9-0 decision is still very disappointing, but the fact that we got to a 7-2 is a win, especially at 1 a.m. And essentially what this does is kind of like what Judge Boasberg did when he said, hey, stop, do not deliver those people into El Salvador, turn that plane around. Basically, they're saying that plane better not take off, and we know how y'all like to act. So we will see ultimately what the Supreme Court comes up with, and I'm not necessarily the most hopeful about the Supreme Court, but we also will see how this court decides to act. And I think right now they're trying to figure out, is this a administration that will even ignore our court orders? And I think that may sway how they decide to rule on this particular underlying issue.
See, this is going to be interesting to see how this works out, because now the Supreme Court issued a very clear ruling. Those putative detainees, all the Venezuelans in the ACLU case, I don't know how many there are. There's probably a couple hundred. Seemed like last time it was like 261. But if they send a plane now of those people that the ACLU is representing after the Supreme Court emergency ruling, do not send that plane. If he sends the plane now, that's going to be a huge deal. Because I know what it says here. Fascism is ignoring the 9-0 Supreme Court ruling. So the thing about the 9-0 ruling, there was a 9-0 ruling. You must facilitate getting Abrego Garcia back. But Trump has had an out. Okay? Bukele has been his out. And that's why he brought him here. So he could put him on camera with the press with Trump saying, look, I'd love to facilitate this. Pam Bondi said, we'll send the plane. But Bukele said, I'm not giving you anything. Sorry, but I'm not doing it. So he had the out to be able to defy that order because he's like, okay, I'll facilitate. We'll send a plane. Oh, we can't facilitate because El Salvador said no. You see how Trump had it sort of arranged to have his little out where he could refuse to follow the Supreme Court order without technically refusing the order because he says, you know, I'm facilitating this, but Bukele is saying I can't do it. Bukele is saying he won't let him leave. They've crafted this so Trump could use that out. But now, this was a direct order to Trump. That plane does not leave. And now, if that plane goes to El Salvador, that is going to be a complete breaking of the Supreme Court decision that he won't be able to wriggle out of with any type of plausible deniability. So this was a big ruling. And now I think the Supreme Court did this very purposefully. Because, dude, everybody thought the court was just going to be like, go Trump, go Trump, go Trump. But I think there's actually a lot going on here and some significant tactical errors by the Republicans. Because whether you like it or not, at their core, the Supreme Court justices are members of the judiciary. They are judges who worked in these appeals courts. They worked in these circuit courts. They have been part of the judiciary their entire fucking lives. They take very seriously their role in the checks and balances, which is to check presidential and congressional power against the document called the Constitution. And they have a very powerful final word. They have a final word in every court pending appeal. And then when they run it up to the Supreme Court has the final word. And that is the way the Constitution was drafted. That's the way the founding fathers set up this country. And like it or hate it, it's just the way it is. They are the final check and balance. And then everybody acquiesces to that decision. Okay, that's the way it is. That is the rule of law that all government people take an oath to. Now, when you have situations of Trump using this plausible deniability to sneak his way around obeying court orders, and you have Republicans drafting legislation threatening to take away judges' power to do their fucking job. Like the Republicans are proposing legislation that HR 1526 or whatever, it's never going to pass. That would say that, you know what? None of these district judges can stop things anymore. We're going to take away their power to be a checks and balance. I don't think the Supreme Court justices are going to look at that and look favorably on that. They're not. They know what is up. Like the Trump administration, in response to the judicial rulings and the judges exercising their constitutionally provided checks and balance power, now the Republicans want to take away the power of the judiciary to allow Trump to do whatever he wants. I don't think they're going to be into that. I think that is going to make them realize the high stakes that are here with all of these cases. I think this is going to be problematic. And yes, this entire deportation scam is Stephen Miller's work. Of course it is. This whole thing, though, it's a scam. That's the problem with it. They're trying to scam their way into being able to move out as many people as possible because they don't want to go through the legal channels and actually put in all the work because they're not workers. They're not good at their job. They're lazy and they're fucking power hungry and they want to just be able to do shit without actually having to do their job. These people in the Trump administration, these are not the most qualified people. They are the laziest, least qualified people who want to do shit where they get to break all the rules because they have power. That's how they roll. But yeah, man, they are pissed. What is up, guys? Thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, you want to support independent resistance media, you know what to do. Drop that sub, hit the like button, and please share it. And we do love our members, so if you want to become a member, it's another really great way to support. Thanks again for everything, guys. I'll see you next time. Let's go.